Now that was a surprise. Even though I'd heard the official preview, even though I'd heard the 1 minute snippet, I still wasn't expecting Nightshift Superstar to sound like it did. I spoke about what I thought the structure of the song would be in my initial thoughts video, based on the preview and based on the snippet, and my thoughts were that there would be the verse, the chorus, maybe a pre-chorus, do that twice, possibly a bridge, another chorus, and then the song would end, something like that. And what we got actually is a bit similar to Be With You in terms of the structure. Be With You sings a verse and a chorus over the organ section, and then it sings that same structure, a verse and a chorus, but the second time round with electronic elements and the bass, and the final time it plays that same structure but with a heavier guitar part. There is an intro, which has actually two parts to it, but this intro slowly builds into the first chorus, and then after the chorus, before we go back into the verse, we have an extended bass section, which is basically a bass solo with the drums playing a two-step beat behind it, very heavy, just kick, snare, drum, and cymbal, like a China cymbal. And then we're into the verse, which is the same as the first part of the intro, except this time there's some bass, there's some drums in there. The second part of the intro is actually forming the pre-chorus. We have that second chorus and that bass outro again after that one. And then we go into the bridge section, which I thought we'd have. But what I wasn't expecting was that this bridge section would actually be the 1 minute snippet we heard from the Muse website. I thought that snippet was going to be the intro, like the very first thing we hear, because it has all these different parts that are building up, and I thought the first chorus would be an explosion, really propel you into the song, and we'd have a different climax later. But I was wrong, I've been surprised. The first choruses and verses are really stripped back actually. There is basically no guitar in this song at all. There are these little guitar runs that are very similar to the strings runs. There's one of those in the intro and another one pops up, but there is basically no guitar at all. It is just drums, bass, vocals, and some decorative instruments and synths. And I was not expecting that. I was thinking that this was going to be a lot more extravagant, a lot more full, but it only really gets that way at parts of the intro when it's building up into the song, and in that bridge when we build up to the final chorus. So because it's not a really big pop song like I was expecting, mainly because of Be With You and how that sounds and what we'd heard from the snippet, I'm pleasantly surprised. It doesn't feel like it's trying to go for something too big and it's a swing and a miss. It doesn't feel like it's trying to appeal to a mass market. It feels like what this song is going for is a 70s disco vibe and a fun bass line. It's not trying to sound like other songs. It's very comfortable being a bit unconventional. The bass tone is really distorted. That is not a mainstream bass tone. And when we have the bass solos, the drums are pretty heavy. So it's got distortion, it's got heaviness, and it's mixed in with those more accessible elements like the strings, the disco groove, and the vocals. And so if I think about what this song is trying to achieve, which is mainly just to be fun, while still being a bit different, I think this song has really achieved that. And I was quite worried that this wasn't going to fit with the other songs we'd heard. But actually, I think this still fits with the album's theme. And my hopes for a cohesive album, certainly in terms of the style of all the songs, has been restored, because the song that is the least like the others is still unraveling. So it will be interesting to see if any other songs have that 8-string heaviness that Unraveling has. Because at the moment, that's the only one, and it's making it feel a little bit out of place. And there is nowhere near as much distortion in Unraveling as there is in this song. And so the song ends with a big final chorus. There's no lead in to the next song, which would be Shimmering Scars, so we're still waiting to find out what that song will sound like. The intro of this song sounds like a siren, and that part sounds like it's cut off. So maybe, as we've heard that there are transitions in this album, that is a transition from the end of The Dark Forest. Maybe that ends with a siren and bleeds perfectly into Nightshift Superstar. So now I'm even more intrigued to hear what The Dark Forest sounds like. Overall, my thoughts on this song are very positive. I like the bass line a lot. I said that before. That is still the case. And the bass is definitely the highlight of this song. It's been a very long time since we've had a Muse song where the bass line has been this prominent, this integral to the song, because again, there is no guitar in this song. There are some other cool things. In the intro, there's a lot of pitch sliding, pitch shifting. We're glissing in between the notes and our chords instead of simply moving to different notes in semitones, half steps, whole steps. And I'm pretty sure in the intro, some of these shifts especially towards the end of the intro where that guitar run is. There is a synth in the back that is actually going up by a quarter tone, not a semitone. So some microtonal intervals are present in that intro as well, which is very interesting. There are unfortunately some things I don't really like about the song. The first one is something I mentioned in my initial thoughts video, which is in the final bridge before we get the longer bass solo. In order to make the bass more impactful, a filter has been put on essentially the whole song, all the instruments. That's to make them less quieter or to make them sound like they're less present, and then when they come back in, the idea is that they sound more effective. And what I said in my initial thoughts video is I really hope that it doesn't sound like that on the studio release, because if that's the case and that is the way they want to make the bass more impactful, that is a really lousy production technique. And unfortunately, they have done that. There are a couple instances in the songs we've heard so far where the mix has been a bit problematic. There's a bit in the Be With You mix where the guitar comes in after the build-up and it sounds a bit weird, like it's clipping or it's quickly alternating between each ear. It just doesn't sound very good. It doesn't sound as full, as coherent, like a wall of sound as I think it's trying to. It just sounds a bit jarring. And I don't really understand why. Dan Lancaster is the new producer and is the one mainly responsible for the mix on these new Muse songs. He's been producing Muse songs since Will of the People, since Won't Stand Down. And I do have to say, comparing how he mixed Won't Stand Down, which is a mix that I really do like, to some of these more recent songs is quite surprising. Won't Stand Down is a pretty heavy song, and it's mixed in a way that the heaviness really feels impactful. In this song, there are some examples in the lower end of the frequency spectrum where the heaviness in the low end is just not as impactful as it should be. And these should be easy fixes, which is why I'm quite annoyed that a band that is releasing their 10th studio album and is known for having heavier sections in their songs are making these mistakes. The bass tone, because of its distortion and the way it's mixed, sometimes means I can't really hear what's going on in the bass line. That may be by design, but I'd personally like it to be a little bit more clear. The drums could be mixed a bit better too. Sometimes I can't quite hear enough detail, especially in the tom work. And after the section with the filter, when we're meant to have the more impactful bass, the more present bass, when Chris is doing his runs from the chorus there, the drums underneath do not sound the same as the drums from before. Even though the drum part is exactly the same, the kick drum is a lot louder. It makes me wonder if what they simply did was amplify the frequencies at the low end across those instruments to make it more impactful. But in doing so, they've amplified frequencies in the bass drum that now interfere with frequencies in the bass line and Chris's bass tone. It's really hard for me to listen to all of the details and nuances in the bass because the kick drum is so overpowering, and it's only overpowering in this section after the filter. And all it would require is for that kick drum to be brought down slightly. Also, instead of using a filter to make your bass more impactful, there are so many other production techniques you can use. The most obvious one would be panning. Move the instruments in between your ears to disorient the listener and then bring them back to the middle. That would work a lot better, and it wouldn't, first of all, make the instrument sound bad because you're artificially modifying the sound in a really crude way. And two, you can still hear all of the details in the instruments, in the lines that they're playing. I feel like this is basic stuff, and I've been guilty when I've made music or covers of making a mix that isn't very good. And I listen back to it a little bit later and I go, oh, I know what I did wrong there. So when I hear this stuff in a band like Muse, I'm quite surprised that it happens at all, to be honest. I did say I didn't want this song to be ruined by the mix in any way, and unfortunately, I don't think the song is ruined, but it's not as good as it would have been, especially if that bridge section had been mixed a little bit differently, and if we'd have just changed some of the presence of the bass tone. Those small changes would have had a big impact on this song. But fortunately, the songwriting, the actual song itself, I do like a lot. So if I heard a live version of this song that was obviously mixed properly and didn't sound like a really thin live version, I would really like it. If I saw Muse live and I heard them play this song, I'm sure it would be a great fun song and I'd really love it. I'm simply talking about some small mixing things that make the studio version slightly worse than it should be. But I'll take a really enjoyable song over a really good mix, because we can always fix the mixes on another day. Fans can even re-record their own cover versions. It's not the end of the world, but it is disappointing and just shouldn't be happening for a band like Muse at this level. If there's anything you think I missed, it's probably because I already mentioned it in my initial thoughts video based on the preview and the snippet, so check that one out. Oh, and the pop song it sounds like, the one that I couldn't quite remember in my last video, thank you to the commenter who pointed this out. They said the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it sounds like Can't Stop with the octaves. I'll play the part again. So I'm very glad to have pieced that one together finally. That was bugging me for the longest time. So, overall, pleasantly surprised still. I'm looking forward to the rest of the album. It seems like the focus has been on writing good songs, writing fun songs, and writing songs that work together in an album. We haven't had a cohesive album, in my opinion, since Drones, and before then, probably Black Holes and Revelations, as I'm not really sure how cohesive you could say The Resistance or The Second Law are, even though I like both of those albums. So I'm excited to hear any more songs we may get before the release day. We've had our 5 singles, so I think this is probably it. I'll release a predictions video at some point before the album drops. Thank you to all the people who have been supporting the Muse content recently. There's been a lot of comments I've been responding to, a lot of good discussion, and more Muse content is on its way.